back into the video. Today's video is what if Jake was in Island Part 2. So this is the cast for Jake to be in action. Okay, so for Jake, Gwen won. I was pretty surprised. It's a shame because I actually thought Cody could have won that season. But let's get back to the theory. Cody gets a free spot in the cast because he was in the finale last season. And I think Cody personally should have been in action because he would been in the finale, and I think it makes more sense because of his friendship with Jake. Cody, Justin, Owen, and Jake would be traveling together. Now I realize Jake is a lot older than Justin, so instead of them being a couple, because I wanted to fully respect this timeline, the ages, I decided to have Jake and Justin as best friends. Nothing more, nothing less. So, yeah, basically, Justin gives Jake his older friend, who's also called Tom. But I think Justin would actually help Jake develop as a character. But outside that, let's begin. So, Noah, Tyler, Eva, and Katie didn't compete, and Ezekiel do not qualify for the season, but everybody else is in the cast like normal. So, in episode 1, so basically episode 1 is just a non-elimination round. And Ezekiel's not here. And if I'm being honest, I think Cody would win. So episode 2, Gwen and Trent still win the challenge because Jake gets caught very early on because he's very anxious. Cody would also call early on, as Jake would be traveling with Cody, Owen, and Justin. Justin wouldn't be as popular on his team this season because he made it far last season. Lindsay is traveling by herself with Beth. Heather is traveling with Lindsay and Beth because Heather's not been that mean to them historically. And I think, personally, Heather is not as hated. She's not hated in this timeline because nobody really knew her. Jeff and Bridget are still making out. DJ's traveling with Duncan and Harold's with Oshana. And Izzy's off by herself. Izzy would be with Owen, Cody, and Justin, but she would get caught. And I think there's still no reason for Jeff and Bridget to get voted off like normal. And just to be on the safe side, Justin would likely have been in the bottom 3. So now we go on to the gaffers and the grips, and let's get on to the teams. So this was the teams in the original, and I don't think they would change, even with, however, some interactions would change, like Gwen picking Heather because she would see her as like a good player. But let's get on to what team did Jake get on. So Jake, 80% of you guys said he'd be on the grips. So Jake gets put onto the grips, and Cody gets put onto the gaffers because I think out of these guys, Jake would be upset that Cody is on the opposite team, but Cody says it's grand and they can still be cool once they get to the merge. In episode 3's the acting challenge, and Trent would do okay here. Jake would offer to push up the items, but Justin wouldn't assist in helping. This is because Justin would be more than likely trying to helping in challenges in the season because he's trying to earn people's trust, but he still doesn't want to damage his physique. Duncan would still do what he did in the original, and Izzy would do the grandma. I think DJ still has his alliance with Chef, and I think in this episode, Jake has Owen and Justin. Now the thing is, Trent wouldn't be as aggravated with Duncan being with Gwen because of the fact that Cody is here. So Cody would likely be in that trio group, and Trent was stressing out on how Gwen was she's not into him. So I think because of that, Cody would be friends with Harold. And I'm not saying Cody and Duncan would be friends, because I don't imagine Cody and Duncan being friends, but I do imagine them getting along all right, way better than they would have in Pro Tour. And I think Izzy gets voted off because she cost them the challenge, and I think even though people would want Justin out, they would actually see that Justin was drawing in this challenge. So Izzy's out. Episode 4 is about is where Trent's derailment happens. Does Trent still lose his mind? And I don't. And my answer is no. Jake and Justin are getting on really well, and they talk to Owen on how Jake talks to Justin how they need to get further into the game, right? And Jake says why, and Justin says we have the advantage at this point. We can make a guys alliance to keep Trent around and get Lindsay and Beth. Trent is still throwing challenges at this point, but he's not lost his derailment arc. So Trent is not obsessed with number 9. Like, he's still obsessed with number 9, because that was the first of all, his number 9 obsession has nothing to do with Gwen. But Trent's not completely losing it at this point. So he's not completely losing his mind. And Gwen Duncan wouldn't say, oh, maybe Trent's obsessed with you. And I think Gwen and Trent could talk Trent out of his number 9 thing, so he wouldn't be hitting himself and saying the number 9 stuff in episode 4, but it's an all-elimination round, so it doesn't really matter in this episode. Episode 5 is the cowboy episode. Trent would do okay. Justin would actually jump this time, and Jake would also jump, and everyone else qualifies for the second round. Trent would still be throwing at this point, because Justin and Jake wouldn't know that Trent is throwing the challenge. Like, nobody on the team would know, because Justin overheard a conversation between Gwen and Trent. Because Justin originally heard the conversation over Gwen and Trent. And I think for here to happen, Trent doesn't throw the challenge. He throws the challenge, they lose. Gwen and Trent talk, but they never break up, because Trent and Gwen don't have a falling out, and Gwen is not aware that Trent is throwing challenges because he's hiding it a lot better. So, who gets voted off here? Because the girls would ask Trent to vote for Justin because of last season, but they are unable to convince Owen, Jake, or Justin to vote for the other. Now, the girls think Trent to try to convince Owen, because they would think convincing Owen would be easier than convincing Jake and Justin to vote for each other. Meanwhile, what Jake and Justin try to convince Trent, because they think it's easier to convince Trent to vote for Lindsay or Beth than Lindsay and Beth voting for each other. And I think the 3 decide to vote Beth, and the other 3 vote Owen. Now, I don't know what this tiebreaker would be, because in this episode wasn't a tiebreaker. So, the tiebreaker is like one last rodeo. And I think Beth could be Owen in the tiebreaker, because I think Owen's going to do awful in the tiebreaker round. And so I think Owen is actually eliminated, because he would likely lose instead of Lindsay and Beth. Episode 6. Obviously, got to bring Chris back up. Is the aftermath. And basically, in the aftermath, Jeff would be talking to and Bridget are talking to Owen on how is Owen not annoyed and how Trent threw the challenge, and Owen says, why would he be annoyed at his friend Trent? He's still friends with him. Like, he gets it, but he's not angry. Like, he's just happy that his friends Justin and Trent and Jake are still in Cody, so. And Izzy's still crazy. And her and Owen are making out. So, in episode 7, Izzy still returns as she's eliminated. So the announcement begins, and Chris explains that Izzy's returned. Izzy gets put back into the grips, which Jake and Justin sees this as a good opportunity to try and get her on side. Izzy would get along with Jake pretty well in this episode, however, because he never finds out Gwen and Trent through the challenge, Gwen doesn't throw the challenge here, so she wouldn't lose for the team. Heather would be suspicious on DJ. Justin would talk to Jake on how they need to think on someone else to try and manipulate on their side. And Trent is still purposely throwing the challenge. He suggests Lindsay to push the stroller. Justin's suspicious of it. Izzy is happy to work with these guys. I think Harold will push for his team, but because Harold doesn't get with the shovel, the Gaffers win the challenge. Sending the Crystal Relation. Now, Izzy has immunity because she's just a returning contestant, as Chris would say. Izzy is a returning contestant, so she has immunity. Lindsay and Beth would vote for Justin. Trent would also side with and Izzy is with the guys. But I think Izzy can be convinced with Trent to vote for Justin, as she doesn't have the same connection Owen does. And Jake, he wouldn't vote for Justin, so I do think Justin is the next booter of this season. Jake is pretty shocked that Justin's out, and Justin would hug him saying, win the game, and best of luck to Jake, and says, hey, you're doing excellent. You don't need me to win the game. See you later, my friend. In episode 8, Jake is really sad that Justin is out, and Trent and Gwen are okay relationship-wise. Lindsay and Beth are pretty chill, and Jake realizes they need to vote one of them out at this point. Because Justin's out, Jake is too depressed to study, and Trent accidentally falls asleep. Cody is with Gwen, so Gwen and Cody don't study either. So it's Lashana, Duncan, Cody, Gwen, Trent, and Jake are the ones who are not infected. And I think Duncan and Lashana still win this challenge. As Trent's still throwing, Lashana still gets the reward. Episode 9 is the Scary Movie Challenge. Alright, so the challenge. DJ's still the scarer. And it's Beth. First part of the challenge, Lindsay and Harold. Lindsay still gets a bad scare. Harold gets an okay scare. DJ gets scared by Chef, so he gets extra points. Lashana and Gwen. And then it's Jake. I think it's obvious that Lashana and Gwen, Jake would be more like scared than Gwen and Lashana. The making out scene, it's Heather, Duncan, and Trent, Izzy. And the two couples refuse to make out because they're with somebody else at this point. So instead, Chris decides to actually have just a horror theme challenge, and they add Cody as like a third wheel to cause drama. I think in the end, the Grips lose the challenge. However, DJ still quits as he reveals the alliance and still gets removed from the game, which annoys the rest of his team. Episode 10, the Padlock Escape. It's still Heather that gets thrown in. If the group still find out Lashana trash talked on the PDA. Izzy and Lindsay fight over the padlock key, but nobody breaks their jaw because Owen's not here. I think the Gaffers win the challenge, but it's a non-elimination. So episode 7, Explosivo. Gwen would be annoyed at Lashana for trash talking the TDA because she thought they were friends. Harold is distraught and devastated over this. Heather's just glad she's not on the bottom of her team. Jake talks to Trent and Izzy. So he goes to Izzy and talks about they need to make an alliance to get Lindsay and Beth out. And then he goes to try and get Trent on side to get the girls out as well. And Trent agrees. We have a confession of him being guilty that he got Owen and Justin out. But he just wants Gwen to get far and win the season again. He wants Gwen to make it merge. So I think what will happen is Izzy still goes Explosivo in the challenge, and Duncan says, "Welcome to my world." So Gwen, Cody, and Duncan are still together. The Gaffers won the challenge, and everyone votes for Izzy. Because, however, even though Izzy cost him the challenge, Jake would go to Trent and talk to him on how Izzy, while she did cost us the challenge, we need to vote for Izzy. Trent would decide to not vote Izzy here, as he would think and try to convince Jake and explaining that if we get rid of Izzy, we would have to face a tiebreaker, and there's a chance we could lose the tiebreaker and find the other one's sent home next round. And I think Trent's able to eventually talk Jake around into the point where Jake would listen to him and vote him off, would listen to him to get him to vote them off. I think in a tough vote, with the other two voting for Izzy, Beth is eliminated. Now, I know what you're thinking. You're probably thinking why I voted Beth here instead. Well, Trent's throwing challenges, and he still has that strategy at this point. And, well, he's been talking to Gwen. They've been on pretty well. Trent still... Izzy costed him the challenge today, and he needs her vote. But he took her out next. Beth is the biggest threat that's not immune, and she's been a social threat, and she's not going to catch on that Trent's throwing challenges. So I think Beth goes here. Episode 12 is an aftermath. So in the aftermath, Justin is annoyed that how he finds out Trent's throwing challenges. He's annoyed at this. Beth is annoyed at Trent, but then realizes because he's doing it for in the name of love, Beth and Justin are not as annoyed once they find out what the reason why, but they're still annoyed. Beth says that she had fun and she wants Lindsay to win. Justin is annoyed at the fact that he got eliminated because of someone throwing the challenge. But Beth and Justin respects Trent for that strategy, which is something he'll use in the future. Beth also respects Trent for this strategy and says that she does admire Trent and Gwen's relationship, so she hopes they go far. Courtney wins this minigame, and now we're episode 13. So going into the bank, Trent, going to the bank is still a shot. And on the grips, I think it's Trent. Jake, Izzy, and Lindsay try to save Trent. There's not all they can do. The Gaffers win. The Gaffers are a bigger team. They win the first part of the challenge. They're forced to leave Trent in the safe. Courtney gets put into the grips because she gets surprised to Duncan and there's a lesser team. And Courtney, with her fresh attitude, is someone to make the grip, makes the wheels. Duncan says it's almost like stripping a car. I think between the grips and the gaffers, because I was not here to the wheel, the grips win the challenge. And now the gaffers have to go elimination. Now, at first glance, you might think it's Heather, but Lashawna trashed on the end. Lashawna hasn't yet done her apology cheer, so I think Cody would vote Lashawna. Gwen and Duncan vote for Lashawna. Harold, he'd probably reluctantly vote for Lashawna because him and Heather are working together at this point. As Heather gets the others to vote for Lashawna. Episode 14, I think Heather goes to Harold and says we need to work together to vote out. Work together to beat the competition, which he accepts. Courtney goes to Trent and explains that she knows he's throwing challenges, so he better stop or else he's exposing him to the group. And Trent's like, okay, I'll stop. And Trent's like, oh no, that's my whole thing. I can't help Gwen anymore. And Courtney says, well, she does get it. She'd do the same for Duncan. He needs to stop because he's going to get himself eliminated. I think when the pillars come around, I think the grips still lose the first part of the challenge. The gaffers win. So it's Gwen versus Lindsay. Cody. Heather versus Jake, Trent, and Gwen. Harold, Izzy, Courtney, Duncan. I think Cody, Lindsay. I think Cody. Heather, Jake. I think Heather would win that. Gwen and Trent. I think Trent wouldn't want to hit Gwen, but he's in a tough situation because he knows he can't throw the challenge to help Gwen. So he puts up a decent effort, but still loses. Courtney is okay with this, so with Gwen being concerned that Trent's in a bit of trouble here, Gwen and Trent both fall off the platform, not one fight each other. So it's 1-1. It's a 1-3. It's the tie. Harold and Izzy, I think Izzy would lose to beat Harold with his mad skills. So 2-3. And then Courtney beats Duncan. Grips still win. Knowledge. Episode 15. So the slow motion boxing, it starts with Lindsay and Harold. I think Harold wins the challenge. Badminton is Heather versus Jake. I think Heather would win because I don't think Jake would be that good at something like this. It's now the wrestling, and it would be Duncan versus Courtney. I think Courtney still wins that challenge. Finally, it's basketball, and it's Izzy against Cody. Now, I do think Cody would win because he's pretty crafty in like the dodgeball competition. So it's down to a tiebreaker. And I think it's a cheer between Trent and Gwen. And I think Courtney, this is where she shows on the PDA that, Trent's really screwed up his team. And Trent's going to realize, oh dear, he can't throw challenges. I think he doesn't cheer. That completely apologizes to Courtney. Courtney's fine with it. Trent wins the challenge. And Duncan wants to get rid of Harold, but I think Cody, Gwen, and Cody, they vote Heather. And now it's the merge. So this is our merge cast. So we have a pretty big merge right now. And 8, we have 9 instead of 7. So episode 16, Dolph merger. Trent and Cody and Gwen. Duncan, Courtney wants to get rid of Gwen and Trent. Cody, Gwen, and Trent are a trio. Harold and Jake get along in the merge. I feel like Lindsay would also get along with Jake during the team phase. And So it is. I think Lindsay and Courtney still win the challenge. It doesn't really matter though, because it's not election. Episode 17, Superhero ID. I think Jake can make a costume. Cody and Jake are on the same teams again, so they're glad that they're back together. Trent will be happy to see Jake again. I think Harold would also befriend Jake. And I think Duncan is trying to get Courtney to befriend Gwen. And Courtney and Gwen are getting along okay. I think Courtney still wins the 10 second. Lindsay still wins 10 seconds of start because of Wonder Woman, because Chris liked her as a kid. Courtney still wins the challenge, so Courtney has immunity. I don't think Jake and Harold can match her level of enthusiasm for the challenge. So Courtney gets Duncan to vote for Trent. Jake and Harold and Cody. Harold votes for Duncan. Courtney and Duncan vote for Harold. Harold votes for Duncan. Jake, feeling guilty over last season, votes for Harold. Gwen, Trent, and Cody, they vote for Izzy, so that's 3 votes Izzy, 3 votes Harold. Lindsay's a swing vote. She votes for Izzy. Izzy's out of the challenge because Izzy's too much of a powerhouse. I think the others are going to realize Gwen and Trent are there's 2 couples here. We have to deal with that. Episode 18. Jake would approach Harold, Cody, and Lindsay to make a singles alliance to get out Gwen, Trent, Courtney, and Duncan. Cody wouldn't want to get Gwen out, which Jake does understand, but they need to eliminate the people who are going to be massive threats. The aftermath. So Izzy's happy that she's back. Justin still can't believe Trent's in the game. Heather is shocked that she's in the game, but is glad that she's outranked Lashana. Episode 19 is Princess Bride, and Courtney's still the princess, so Courtney is still up here. And I think Duncan crosses, Gwen passes, Trent would fail, Jake passes, Cody fails, Harold passes, and Lindsay fails. Harold still does the math. I think Harold will get a rise out of Duncan, to be honest, so I think Harold will get to the top. Harold loses to Courtney. Now, Courtney wants Trent out, so she wants to go to Duncan to get Trent out. So she wants to vote for Harold, so these two vote for Harold, because she's going to use that thing she used on Trent later. And Jake, Harold, Cody, and Lindsay, though, vote. These 4 vote for Duncan. So, Duncan would be going home, except Courtney plays a bit dirty here and shows everyone the footage that Trent's been throwing challenges throughout this entire season. I think they do get mad and just vote him off. Cody would understand because he would do the same for Trent, for Gwen. Lindsay said she would do the same for Tyler. Harold says he would do it for Lashana. Jake is a lot more annoyed at this because Justin was eliminated because of Trent. But he realizes that Trent was doing it because it's someone that he loves, and Jake would do the same, so he's not annoyed at this. So I think it really develops his character, and they do vote for Duncan. Which does annoy Duncan, because Jake doesn't want to vote for Duncan, but they can't vote for Gwen because Cody's not going to vote Gwen, so I think Duncan goes here. Episode 20, Get a Clue. So, Harold talks to Jake on how they need to get Gwen out, and Courtney, being Courtney, starts to talk to people. mainly Jake and Harold, on how last season Gwen and Cody took each other to the end. They carried the game. Like, if it gets to the final three, that Cody's going to choose Gwen. Like, if it gets to the final two, Cody is going to choose Gwen. And Jake says he refuses to vote for Cody because him and Cody are chill. They're tight. He's not going to vote for Cody. And Courtney said that's fine because she was going to get Gwen out anyways. However, Jake and Harold wouldn't like this though because they are friends with Cody. But Lindsay would accept because she doesn't have a problem voting for Gwen. Everyone would think that Trent is the murderer because he betrayed the group on how he was throwing challenges, and I think Trent would apologize and how he's sorry that he threw challenges. But something they have to understand is it wasn't anything personal, as he just wanted to help Gwen get further. And I think Gwen is annoyed at Trent for basically getting her this far because of him throwing challenges, but Gwen's proven that she didn't need Trent to do that. And Trent's proven that he made a mistake, he messed up. And I think the group do actually forgive him. And Lindsay wins the challenge. Jake and Harold want to vote for Courtney, but they realize they need her vote. They vote for Gwen. As payback for Trent screwing up, Gwen goes in his place. Trent and Cody are completely shocked over this, and Gwen's eliminated. Episode 21. Because Owen didn't win the season, he's not completely bankrupt, so he doesn't come back as a mole. Cody would be annoyed at Harold and Jake for voting off Gwen, and Jake does apologize sincerely to Cody, which, because Cody doesn't hold any grudges really, I think he would be okay with this, as he said it's only the game. It's just a competition. Trent would also feel the same way, but would still be pretty bummed out that he feels guilty for getting rid of Gwen. I think Harold would do okay here. Trent would be really good at this challenge, and Jake would do awful. Cody would do okay, but I think in the end, Trent still gets to through. Paparazzi, Lindsay does good, Harold does good, Jake does terrible, Cody does terrible. Actually, no, Cody would do well because he was in like a band, so Cody does very well, and then Courtney does okay. Trashing the room, I think it's still Courtney. So Courtney wins the challenge, and I think Jake, Lindsay, and Harold are going to vote for Trent, but Courtney realizes she needs Trent because of Cody. But I think she does vote for Trent, so I think Trent's finally throwing days challenges are behind him, and I think he's completely out in this episode. Episode 22. Instead of a pair of challenges, a 1v1 fighting a robot, I think Harold wins the challenge. And he can bring one person to the top on that mountain. And he chooses Cody. And him and Cody bonds again, I think they make up. It's not. Episode 23, 2008, Owen. Jake and Harold. Cody needs to get out Courtney. Courtney is trying to get Lindsay in an alliance. Because Owen's not there for the challenge. Harold wins very easily. And I think Harold's going to choose the order that's easiest for him. So I think it's going to be Harold. It's going to be Lindsay, Jake, Courtney, Cody, and himself. Lindsay still throws up pretty bad. Jake doesn't do that well. Courtney refuses to, was the last one to go in. And still refuses. Cody doesn't do that well. And I think Harold would win the challenge because he did the best outside of Beth. I don't think Beth's here now. And I think everyone finally gets rid of Courtney, but Cody is still here, and Courtney wants Cody out. And I think Harold doesn't want to vote for Cody. Cody doesn't want to love. Jake and Cody will love each other. And I think Courtney and Lynn, I think they finally get Courtney out because they realize Courtney's too much of a powerhouse. I mean, Harold goes to Lindsay and says, "Hey, let's vote for Courtney. Are you in?" And I think Harold would rather chance Cody making it to the finale again. So I think Courtney's out here. Episode 24. And Harold gets the raccoon. Lindsay gets the chameleon. Jake gets a shark. And Cody gets a bear. So Harold's carrying the raccoon. Lindsay loses the chameleon. I think Cody gets mauled by a bear, so he's just not able to complete the rest of the challenge. And Jake is struggling to get his shark to the end. He is absolutely struggling. And Harold is considering whether or not to take Jake to the end, because he's gotten on with Jake pretty well from the team phase. But he knows Lindsay's going to be easier to beat, and he doesn't know if it's a popular vote. And I think Harold wins the challenge. And I think Cody gets removed because Cody's too injured to continue playing because of the bear. I think Cody gets removed here. Cody, he's injured, but he's not injured enough to get removed. So Cody's still able to play. Harold goes to Lindsay and toss Lindsay on how Cody and Jake would absolutely pick each other in the finale. There's no doubt in my mind that they would not pick each other in the end. And I think Cody gets removed from the game. It's a race to the end. I think Lindsay makes it next, followed by Jake, and Cody just gets removed because he can't bring a bear to the end. And I think the voting process, Harold has immunity. I think Lindsay and Harold vote for Cody, and Jake and Cody vote for Lindsay. And I think Chris just boots both of them, if I'm being honest. Cody gets removed from the... Chris says there isn't a vote tonight because Cody is removed after this challenge. Jake is pretty shocked over this, that Cody got mauled by a bear. And I think Cody says it's fine. He was going to win anyways. Harold and Lindsay are probably going to choose each other. Jake says take care. He hopes he wins this challenge. Episode 25. Chris and Chef are still arguing. Jake, Harold, and Lindsay have to do clean balcony. I think Harold and Jake's not teaming up with him because although he's close to Harold, he isn't nearly as close to Harold as he is to Cody or Owen or Justin. Lindsay, he got on with her in the team phase, so he doesn't really have an opinion on either finalist. I think Jake stick with the Cody, Owen, Justin, and more like Gwen question, right? But I think Harold and Lindsay are more of a people person, so they get the Courtney question, the Trent question, the Duncan question, the Izzy, Heather, or Shauna, Beth. Like, they're very much more people than Jake would be, so I think Harold and Lindsay would get the questions faster than Jake would, so I do think Jake would get some wrong, which gets him really anxious and he starts panicking, so I think it's really close. But I think because of how far behind he'd be, I think between the three, I think Harold wins the challenge. And basically Harold gets to pick on who he wants to take to the finale. So Harold gets an automatic spot in the finale. And he says, well, he does like both Jake and Lindsay, and he's had a great time with Jake. And Jake says he considers Harold a friend, and regardless of what he picks, he'll support him. And Harold says he appreciates it, which is why he's taken Lindsay to the end. This shocks Jake, but Jake has gotten over it at this point. He's not annoyed at Harold. He wants to see if Cody and Justin are okay. And see Owen again. He wishes Harold good luck into winning the finale, and Harold says he owes him one. Harold and Lindsay finally make it into the end. Chris and Chef don't take the plane because it was a three-way tie, so let's get the others in the aftermath. The aftermath, they ask all the questions, everyone still is at the tie, and then Chris says they have to vote. So I think Jake would vote for Harold. Cody would vote for Harold. Courtney votes for Lindsay. Trent votes for Harold. Gwen votes Lindsay. Duncan votes Lindsay. Izzy votes Lindsay. Heather votes Lindsay. Lashana votes Harold. Beth votes Lindsay. Gigi votes Lindsay. Justin votes Lindsay. Owen would vote Lindsay. Jeff votes Harold. And Bridget votes Lindsay. They each get winning endings. And I'm going to put a poll up now on who would win between Harold and Lindsay. Thank you guys for watching. This is the American Story Things to go on. In my part 2 for the Jake series. And Jake is third in this timeline, so I hope you enjoyed that one. And yeah, peace, farewell.